Welcome back to Things I Know Nothing About, the show where we dive headfirst into topics we thought we understood, only to find ourselves utterly bewildered or perhaps occasionally pleasantly surprised. Today, Maya, we're tackling a figure who, for many years, was synonymous with mainstream health advice, often sensationalized, sometimes controversial, and frequently debunked Dr. Mehmet Oz.
Oh, Dr. Oz, he was truly a phenomenon, wasn't he? From prime-time television to supermarket tabloids, his face was everywhere, promising everything from miracle weight loss solutions to cures for various ailments. It felt like every week there was a new secret ingredient or a holy grail supplement he was touting, and frankly, a lot of it sounded too good to be true.
And as we'll explore today, much of it was too good to be true. The Federal Trade Commission, Senate hearings, and countless scientific reviews have systematically dismantled many of his most prominent claims over the years. However, our deep dive today isn't just about debunking, it's about finding out if, amidst all the noise, the sensationalism, and the scientific missteps, Dr. Oz actually got anything right.
That's an intriguing challenge, Alex, because for a long time, the prevailing narrative was that he was almost consistently wrong, or at least wildly exaggerating. I remember the sheer volume of products that would suddenly appear on shelves after he mentioned them, and the fervor around them was immense, driven largely by his platform.
Exactly. So let's start with some of his most infamous claims, the ones that really drew the ire of the scientific community and regulatory bodies. First up, we have green coffee extract, which Dr. Oz famously promoted as a magic weight loss cure. He even called it the magic bean for weight loss.
Green coffee extract. I recall that one vividly. It was everywhere. People were genuinely convinced this was going to be the answer to their weight struggles, all without diet or exercise, which, as we know, is always a huge red flag when it comes to any health claim. What was the core of his claim, and what did the science actually say?
Well, Dr. Oz's enthusiastic endorsement was largely based on a single, rather small study involving 16 individuals. This study, published in 2012, suggested that participants lost an average of 17 pounds over 22 weeks while taking green coffee extract. The researchers concluded it was a safe and effective way to lose weight. However, the study was later retracted due to serious methodological flaws and unverified data. This is a crucial point. Relying heavily on a single poorly conducted study, especially one that later collapses under scrutiny, is a hallmark of promoting unproven remedies.
So, the foundation of the magic claim crumbled. It's a classic example of how a statistically significant p-value in a small, flawed study can be amplified into a dramatic, clinically insignificant claim in the media. When we talk about effect size, that 17 pounds, even if it were real, needs to be compared to a baseline or control group doing something similar, like diet and exercise, or even a placebo. Was there any substantial evidence from larger, more robust studies comparing green coffee extract to a placebo or lifestyle interventions?
Critically, no. Subsequent higher quality research simply did not replicate those dramatic weight loss results. The FTC, in fact, took action against companies making false claims based on this very research, highlighting that the evidence was not competent or reliable. The funding source for that original study was also a company that sold green coffee extract, which immediately raises a red flag for potential conflicts of interest, something we always need to consider when evaluating health claims. It's not just about what the study found, but who funded it and how it was conducted.
That's a perfect illustration of how critical it is to look beyond the headline. A statistically significant finding in a small bias study can be entirely clinically insignificant, meaning it doesn't translate to a meaningful real-world benefit for most people. The relative risk of not losing weight compared to the absolute risk of wasting money on an ineffective supplement becomes very clear in these situations.
Precisely. Moving on to another popular one, raspberry ketones. Dr. Oz promoted these as a fat burner in a bottle. This claim also took the health world by storm, with people scrambling to buy supplements containing these compounds, again, hoping for an effortless path to weight loss.
Oh, raspberry ketones. I remember those bottles flying off the shelves. It always sounded so appealing. The idea that a compound found in a fruit could just melt fat away. But as with green coffee, my skepticism radar immediately goes up when fat burner is mentioned without any mention of diet or exercise changes. What was the scientific backing for that particular claim?
The scientific backing for raspberry ketones as a human fat burner was, and largely remains, incredibly weak. Most of the research supporting these claims was confined to animal studies, primarily in rodents or in vitro studies, meaning experiments conducted in test tubes or petri dishes. These studies showed some potential for raspberry ketones to influence fat metabolism, but the leap from a rat study to a human weight loss miracle is enormous and scientifically irresponsible. The dosages used in animal studies are often far higher, relative to body weight, than what a human could safely consume, making direct extrapolation highly problematic.
That's a classic misinterpretation, isn't it? What works in a lab or in a mouse simply doesn't automatically translate to humans. The complexity of human metabolism, diet, and lifestyle factors is so much greater. So even if there was a statistically significant effect in a rodent, was there any evidence of a clinically significant effect in humans that would justify the fat burner label?
Absolutely not. When researchers looked for human trials, they found insufficient evidence. The effect size, if any, was so small as to be negligible, certainly not enough to warrant the dramatic claims of being a fat burner in a bottle. There were no large, randomized, placebo controlled human trials demonstrating significant weight loss. This is another case where the dramatic claim sounds impressive, but when you dig into the methodology and sample size, there's just no substance for human application. The public was misled into believing something based on cherry-picked preclinical data.
It's fascinating how a compound can exist, have some minor biological activity, and then be blown completely out of proportion for marketing purposes. It really underscores the importance of our framing guidelines, especially distinguishing between relative risk and absolute risk, and considering effect size. The relative risk of not trying raspberry ketones is 0, but the absolute risk of spending money on an ineffective product is 100% for the consumer.
Precisely. And this pattern continues with our next infamous claim, Garcinia cambogia. Dr. Oz dubbed this the holy grail of weight loss. That's a pretty bold statement for any supplement, let alone one that, once again, lacked robust human evidence.
The holy grail of weight loss. Wow, that phrase alone should trigger alarm bells for anyone listening, because if there truly was a holy grail, we wouldn't still be having conversations about diet and exercise. It implies a single magical solution, which almost never exists in the complex world of human health. What was the actual scientific picture for Garcinia cambogia?
The evidence for Garcinia cambogia, specifically its active ingredient hydroxycitric acid, HCA, is another prime example of overblown claims. While some early studies showed very modest weight loss, subsequent higher quality human studies revealed only a minimal and, crucially, clinically insignificant effect compared to a placebo. We're talking about an average weight loss of perhaps around 2 pounds over several weeks, which is often within the margin of error or easily attributable to other factors, and certainly not the Holy Grail. A well-regarded 1998 study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, for instance, found no significant difference in weight loss between participants taking Garcinia cambogia and those on a placebo.
2 pounds is hardly a holy grail, is it? That's the difference between eating a slightly larger meal or having a particularly good bowel movement. It highlights how important it is to not just look at if there's a difference, but how much of a difference there is. A statistically significant finding might mean a difference of 0.5 pounds, which is utterly meaningless in a real-world clinical context for someone trying to lose weight.
Exactly. And again, we see the pattern of misleading study framing in the media. A small, statistically significant result in a short-term trial might be cherry-picked and amplified, while the broader body of evidence, especially from longer, more rigorous studies, shows a very different, far less dramatic picture. Consumers are often not presented with this complete picture, leading to unrealistic expectations and wasted money on products that simply don't deliver on the grand promises.
It's a disservice to the public. Frankly, these products are often expensive and they detract from the real proven methods of weight management like balanced nutrition, regular physical activity, and addressing underlying health issues. Promoting a holy grail supplement undermines the hard work and sustained effort that genuine health improvement requires.
Absolutely. Now, let's pivot slightly to a different type of health scare. Dr. Oz created the claim about troubling levels of arsenic in apple juice. This caused widespread panic among parents and consumers, understandably so, given the dangers of arsenic.
Oh, I remember that one. It was terrifying. As a parent, the thought of giving my child something potentially harmful is incredibly distressing. When a medical doctor on national television says there's arsenic in something as common as apple juice, people listen. What was the nuance that Dr. Oz missed or perhaps exaggerated in this particular claim?
This is a crucial point where understanding the science truly matters. Dr. Oz sounded the alarm about arsenic levels, but he failed to adequately distinguish between two very different forms of arsenic, organic and inorganic. Organic arsenic compounds are generally considered harmless and pass through the body relatively quickly. Inorganic arsenic, on the other hand, is the toxic form, a known carcinogen, and the one we should be concerned about. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration (FDA) criticized his methodology because his tests didn't differentiate between these forms. He was essentially lumping harmless arsenic with dangerous arsenic, creating unnecessary alarm.
So, he took a genuine concern, the presence of a potentially harmful substance, but then applied it broadly without the necessary scientific specificity. It's like saying there's sugar in fruit and sugar in a soda without distinguishing between naturally occurring sugars in a fiber-rich matrix and added refined sugars. The context and specific form truly matter for health implications. Did the FDA find any actual public health risk from the inorganic arsenic levels in apple juice at the time?
No, they did not. The FDA stated there was no evidence of a public health risk from inorganic arsenic in apple juice, and that the levels of inorganic arsenic were generally very low and within safety guidelines. This is a classic example of how dramatic claims can be made by cherry-picking data or not understanding the full scientific context. If you test for total arsenic and don't distinguish the types, you can inflate a harmless presence into a terrifying threat. His segment, while sparking conversation, was criticized for causing undue panic without providing the full scientific picture, failing to acknowledge that some forms of arsenic are benign.
It's a powerful lesson in the importance of precision in scientific communication, especially when addressing public health. The media has a responsibility to not just report a finding, but to contextualize it, explain the methodology, and clarify the actual risk. Without that, you move from informing to fear-mongering.
Absolutely.
And speaking of public health, we can't discuss Dr. Oz's controversies without mentioning vaccines. Early in his show's run, he echoed anti-vaccine tropes, including suggestions of a link between the MMR vaccine and autism, a claim that has been thoroughly and unequivocally debunked by decades of robust scientific research.
That's a particularly sensitive and dangerous area, Alex, given the severe public health consequences of vaccine hesitancy. The MMR autism link, originating from Andrew Wakefield's fraudulent study, has caused immense harm, leading to resurgences of preventable diseases like measles. For a medical doctor to give airtime to such a debunked theory, even if framed as just asking questions, can be incredibly damaging.
It truly can be. The scientific consensus on vaccine safety and efficacy is overwhelming, suggesting a link between the MMR vaccine and autism without strong, verifiable evidence, even as a question lends credibility to a dangerous myth. It's a classic example of creating false equivalency, where a thoroughly disproven theory is presented alongside established science as if both are equally valid subjects of debate. However, it's important to note that Dr. Oz did publicly reverse his stance in 2019, endorsing vaccination and emphasizing its importance for public health, which is a significant, albeit late course correction.
That reversal is certainly a positive step, and it speaks to the possibility of learning and adapting, even for public figures who have made missteps. But the initial impact of those early suggestions can linger for years, contributing to a climate of distrust in established medical science. It's a testament to the power of media and the responsibility that comes with it, especially when discussing topics with such profound societal implications.
Indeed. One final example of his more questionable claims involved selenium for cancer prevention. He claimed selenium supplements were the holy grail of cancer prevention. Again, a very bold and appealing statement for something so complex.
Another holy grail. It seems like that phrase was a staple in his lexicon for anything he wanted to promote. Cancer prevention is a massive field of research with diet, lifestyle, and genetics all playing incredibly complex roles. The idea that a single supplement could be the holy grail for prevention sounds highly improbable, to say the least. What did the actual research say about selenium and cancer?
The claim that selenium supplements are a holy grail of cancer prevention is simply not supported by convincing scientific evidence. While selenium is an essential trace mineral and plays a role in antioxidant defense, and some observational studies initially hinted at a correlation between higher selenium intake and lower cancer risk, large-scale randomized controlled trials have largely failed to demonstrate that selenium supplementation prevents cancer in the general population. In fact, some studies like the SELECT trial, Selenium and Vitamin E Cancer Prevention trial, found no benefit for prostate cancer prevention and even suggested a slight increase in the risk of high-grade prostate cancer in some men taking selenium.
That's incredibly important context. Not only did it not provide the promised benefit, but it could potentially have negative consequences, especially with high intakes. It underscores that supplements aren't inherently benign. They can have real physiological effects, both positive and negative, and more isn't always better. The effect size here for prevention was basically zero, and the absolute risk of adverse effects at high doses is a real concern.
Exactly. The idea that if a little is good, more is better is a dangerous fallacy in nutrition and supplementation. High intakes of selenium, for example, can lead to selenosis, which includes symptoms like hair loss, nail brittleness, and neurological problems. So not only was the claim of cancer prevention unfounded, but promoting high doses without proper scientific backing also carried potential risks. This is why we always need to distinguish clinical significance from mere statistical association and consider the full risk-benefit profile.
So, we've reviewed a pretty substantial list of claims where Dr. Oz was, at best, exaggerating and at worst, promoting unsubstantiated or even harmful information. It paints a picture of a public figure who, despite his medical background, often prioritized sensationalism and ratings over rigorous scientific communication. Given all of this, Alex, I'm genuinely intrigued by your initial premise that there was one thing he actually got right. I'm struggling to imagine what that could possibly be, given the consistent pattern we've just discussed.
And that's precisely the twist, Maya, because buried beneath all the green coffee and raspberry ketones, there was a legitimate consumer protection issue that Dr. Oz brought to mainstream attention, albeit in his characteristic sensationalized style. We're talking about olive oil adulteration.
Olive oil adulteration. Really? That's definitely not what I would have guessed. It sounds so mundane compared to magic weight loss beans or cancer cures, but I can see how it could be a real problem. For those unfamiliar, what exactly is olive oil adulteration?
Olive oil adulteration, or food fraud, is a pervasive and long-standing issue in the food industry. It involves mislabeling or diluting higher quality, more expensive olive oils, particularly extra virgin olive oil, EVO, with lower quality oils. This could be cheaper refined olive oils or even other vegetable oils like sunflower, canola, or soybean oil. The product is then sold as genuine extra virgin olive oil, deceiving consumers. Dr. Oz brought this to light in a 2016 segment, claiming that a shocking 80% of the extra virgin olive oil that you buy every day in your supermarket isn't the real deal and may even be fake.
80%, that's a huge number, and it certainly sounds like something Dr. Oz would sensationalize. But even if the figure was exaggerated, the concept of food fraud, especially with a premium product like extra virgin olive oil, is a significant consumer concern. Beyond the financial aspect of paying for something you're not getting, are there other implications of olive oil adulteration?
Absolutely, the implications go beyond just financial deception. Genuine extra virgin olive oil is prized not only for its distinct flavor, but also for its health benefits, particularly its high content of monounsaturated fats and powerful antioxidants like polyphenols. When EVO is adulterated with cheaper refined oils, consumers are stripped of these nutritional benefits. In some rare cases, there can even be health risks, such as undeclared allergens if, say, peanut oil is used, or the presence of harmful processing byproducts from lower-grade oils. So it's a legitimate public interest issue, not just a matter of taste.
That's a crucial point. It's not just about getting ripped off, it's about not getting the health benefits you expect and potentially even being exposed to risks. So Dr. Oz's steel man here is that he did bring a critical, genuine issue to mainstream attention, one that impacts both consumer wallets and potential health outcomes. Even if his specific 80% fake figure was debatable, the underlying problem of food fraud in olive oil is well documented.
Precisely. His core message, your olive oil might not be what you think it is, resonated because the problem is real. Government bodies, non-governmental organizations, and researchers worldwide acknowledge and actively study olive oil adulteration. The European Union, for instance, has invested heavily in fighting olive oil fraud, indicating its widespread nature and economic impact. It's been called the most adulterated food product in the world by some experts.
Okay, so the problem is real, but let's apply our critical lens here. Dr. Oz is known for exaggeration. What about that shocking 80% figure, and how did he suggest people test their olive oil? Because I have a feeling his methods might not have been scientifically sound.
You're absolutely right to be skeptical, Maya. The 80% fake figure was highly disputed by critics, including the North American Olive Oil Association, NAOOA, the NAOA, which represents olive oil importers and marketers in the US, stated that their independent testing consistently showed more than 98% of olive oil in US retail outlets was authentic. This suggests Dr. Oz's figure was either based on outdated data, cherry-picked samples, or simply a dramatic overstatement for television. The discrepancy in figures is vast and highlights the problem with sensationalized reporting versus systematic ongoing quality control.
That's a massive difference from 80% fake to 98% authentic. That immediately tells me that while the problem is real, Dr. Oz's quantification of the problem was likely wildly inflated. And what about his testing methods? I seem to recall something about a fridge test.
Yes, the infamous fridge test. Dr. Oz promoted unreliable methods like refrigerating olive oil to see if it solidified or thickened, claiming that genuine extra virgin olive oil would become cloudy and thick, while adulterated oil would remain clear. He also suggested subjective sensory evaluations, urging viewers to taste and sniff their oil for grassy or peppery notes. These methods are not scientifically accurate ways to determine olive oil purity or quality. The chemical composition of olive oil, even authentic EVO, varies depending on the olive varietal growing conditions and processing, meaning some genuine EVO might not thicken significantly in the fridge and some adulterated oils might.
So, he gave people a false sense of security or alarm based on unscientific home tests. That's a classic Dr. Oz move: identify a real problem, then offer a simplistic, unproven, and often misleading solution or diagnostic tool. It empowers individuals but with inaccurate information. And was there any conflict of interest with his guest expert, similar to the green coffee extract scenario?
Indeed. He faced criticism for featuring a guest expert on his show who had a potential conflict of interest. This expert was employed by a domestic olive oil producer that was directly competing with imported olive oils, which are often the target of adulteration claims. This creates a bias, suggesting that domestic oils are inherently superior or safer than imports, which isn't necessarily true and further complicates the consumer's ability to make informed choices. It's another example of how the presentation of information can be skewed by underlying commercial interests.
This is where the research framing guidelines really come into play. We're acknowledging that the core issue is legitimate, but we're rigorously dissecting the specifics of Dr. Oz's claims. The exaggerated figures, the flawed methodology, and the potential conflicts of interest. It's a nuanced picture, not a black and white one.
Exactly.
So, to summarize the Steelman and the debunking, Dr. Oz was right that olive oil fraud is a genuine issue, but he wildly exaggerated the prevalence with his 80% fake figure and promoted unscientific testing methods. Now for the twist, the truly defensible part. Despite all those flaws, Dr. Oz was fundamentally right in highlighting that olive oil fraud is a genuine, persistent, and significant problem.
Okay, so the core message was right. Even if the delivery and specifics were problematic, that's a subtle but important distinction. What evidence do we have that this problem is as persistent and significant as you claim, beyond his sensationalized segment?
The evidence is extensive and comes from various sources. The U.S. Pharmacopeal Convention's food fraud database lists olive oil as one of the most frequently adulterated food items globally. Interpol and Europol have conducted numerous operations targeting organized crime groups involved in olive oil fraud. Reports from various consumer protection agencies and investigative journalists have at times indicated high percentages of fraudulent olive oils, especially from certain regions or among cheaper, lesser-known brands. For instance, some reports have indicated that up to 80% of Italian olive oils have, at different points in time, been found to be fraudulent, particularly when sold abroad, though this figure fluctuates and is highly dependent on the specific market and time frame of the study. This isn't just a Dr. Oz invention, it's a real ongoing battle for regulators and honest producers.
That's a compelling point, especially the involvement of international law enforcement. It moves beyond just quality control and into the realm of organized crime. So while the NAOA might show high authenticity rates for major brands in the US, now the historical and global context suggests that fraud has been and continues to be a significant challenge, particularly outside of the most scrutinized brands.
Precisely. The problem is complex. While major brands sold in the US might have improved their authenticity rates due to increased scrutiny and testing, the issue persists, especially in the broader global market and with less reputable brands. The focus should be on inorganic arsenic versus organic arsenic in apple juice. Here, it's about truly extra virgin olive oil versus misrepresented olive oil. Dr. Oz, despite his flaws, got people talking about the difference between what they think they're buying and what they're actually getting in a substantial way. He raised awareness about the importance of knowing your food sources and being skeptical of cheap, too good to be true deals on premium products.
And there's a legal angle to this too, right? I recall something about a lawsuit against him regarding these claims. What was the outcome of that, and how does it play into the idea that he was right about the underlying issue?
That's a key part of the story. The North American Olive Oil Association, NAOOA, actually filed a lawsuit against Dr. Oz over his olive oil claims. However, the lawsuit was ultimately dismissed by a Georgia judge. The judge ruled partly because the association failed to demonstrate financial harm, which is a high bar in label cases. Crucially, the judge also viewed the lawsuit as potentially attempting to chill speech on a matter of public concern, suggesting that while Dr. Oz's claims might have been exaggerated, the topic he raised was legitimate enough to warrant public discourse and protection under free speech laws.
That's a powerful legal precedent, isn't it? It doesn't validate his specific scientific claims or his 80% figure, but it strongly suggests that the underlying issue of olive oil fraud is a matter of genuine public interest and concern. The courts recognize that he was speaking to a real problem, even if his presentation was flawed.
Exactly.
It's a nuanced conclusion. Dr. Oz often operated in a space where dramatic, easily digestible claims overshadowed rigorous scientific evidence. His promotion of various miracle cures caused confusion, wasted money, and sometimes even undermined public health efforts. But in the case of olive oil adulteration, he tapped into a legitimate, systemic problem within the food industry. He brought widespread attention to food fraud, a topic that, while less glamorous than a fat burner, has real economic and health implications for consumers.
So, the one thing Dr. Oz was right about wasn't some groundbreaking medical discovery or a revolutionary supplement. It was about consumer awareness regarding food fraud, specifically in a seemingly everyday product like olive oil. He might have been loud, he might have been wrong on the details and methods, but he highlighted a real vulnerability for consumers. That's a truly surprising twist, given his track record.
It is, isn't it? It serves as a powerful reminder that even figures known for scientific missteps can, by accident or design, stumble upon a genuine issue. The challenge for us as critical consumers of information is to discern the kernel of truth from the chaff of exaggeration and misinformation. We need to be able to acknowledge what someone got right, even if we vehemently disagree with almost everything else they've said or done. It's about a systematic review of evidence, not just dismissing everything outright.
And that's precisely what we aim to do here on Things I Know Nothing About. We dig into the complexity, look at the evidence, and try to find the nuance even when it leads us to surprising conclusions about controversial figures. It's a testament to the idea that even a broken clock is right twice a day, or in this case, a TV doctor was right about one very specific, very real problem.
A well-deserved conclusion, Maya. It's about separating the signal from the noise, and in the cacophony of Dr. Oz's career, the signal of olive oil fraud was undeniably there. It's a complex world, and our job is to navigate it with curiosity and a healthy dose of skepticism.